Adrian Wojnarowski joining us from Yahoo, and he joins us on the show. Least athletic player in the NBA is who, Adrian?
Hey, Dan. I'm probably going to go right to the stereotype here. I'll say Matt Bonner. I went right for the low-hanging fruit.
He doesn't even have a high motor. You can't even use high motor for a white guy.
Yeah, New Hampshire, from the hard-scrabble streets of New Hampshire.
I wanted to have you on for a couple of reasons, but first of all, I look back on the decision by Commissioner Stern to veto the Chris Paul deal, and the fallout from that, not only immediately felt, but going to be felt for years now, and how it changed two franchises drastically. Was part of the reasoning the commissioner said, I'm not letting Chris Paul dictate where he wants to go?
Well, I think at that time a big part of the reasoning was trying to get maximum value in the sale of that New Orleans franchise, and they didn't want to take back a lot of the big salaries, the contracts that came back in the deal. They wanted more of a deal of young players and picks, and get some contracts off, which made the team a little more valuable in the sale. That certainly was a part of it, but you're right about it impacting a lot of franchises. Obviously, New Orleans, the Lakers, the Clippers, and Houston. Houston was in a mode where we'll bring in Pau Gasol, and then in free agency they thought they'd get Nene, and that's how they would rebuild. And if they had done that, they wouldn't have been in position for Dwight Howard. So in the end, it worked out for Houston, and they were very upset about it at the time.
Okay, but the impact it had on the Lakers, if Chris Paul ended up with the Lakers, so you don't have Steve Nash there, maybe Dwight Howard stays because there's Chris Paul there. How does it impact the Lakers if they had said yes to that deal?
Well, it would have been interesting. I mean, would you have been able to do the Dwight Howard deal? Would they have had, obviously Bynum was really the piece that went back when they finally did, the Dwight deal, a four-way deal. It would have changed because Chris Paul's a magnet. Obviously, guys want to play with him. He in L.A., with Kobe, those two together, plus, obviously Gasol went out in that deal. Bynum stayed. But in the end, Bynum, with the knees, was his time was ending. Really the only deal that, when you look back at that Lakers deal, even for Dwight, the timing was perfect for the Lakers because Bynum had nothing left. And maybe other teams felt that in the league, but Philly was willing to roll the dice. And, really if the Lakers were just able to keep Dwight, they could keep building around him the way, let's say, Orlando was able to build around him with shooters. But losing out on Paul and then ultimately Dwight, you can't recover from that.
But would Phil have been the coach, Phil Jackson, with the Lakers?
Well,
or would they have been good that what Mike Brown was? I'm trying to think who was going to benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they would have struggled enough for Mike to get fired.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would have brought the Princeton in with Mike Brown, and they brought the Princeton offense in that training camp, and then got off to the poor start and fired Mike Brown. I don't know. You think of all the ripples of that. I don't think they would have. I don't think they would have put the Princeton in for Chris.
If I'm looking at Lakers coach next year will be.
If they make the change, I think it's very wide open. There's a lot of directions they can go, younger, more veteran established. I don't rule out the possibility they still keep Mike. I think it's still maybe tilted against it, but the Lakers know what the market is, and if they don't feel like there's a guy or two that they can get that they really want, maybe you let Mike go one more year. And if you're going to make a change, maybe you do it before the real big free agent class next year. The fact that some players who are there aren't enamored with him, Kobe, Paul Gasol, if Paul's going to re-sign, that hasn't mattered much to Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss. They didn't consult with Kobe when they hired Mike Brown, and we know those guys wanted Phil back, and they went with D'Antoni anyway. So I don't know if they're going to make a change because guys aren't happy with it. One thing about Mitch is he'll do what he thinks is best. And Jim Buss, I still give D'Antoni a puncher's chance here to survive.
We're talking to Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo Sports, NBA writer. As far as the Knicks go, there's no chance Phil coaches, right?
No.
That's out of the question.
That's out of the question, at least while they're bad. Now, it can become the Pat Riley thing maybe down the line where, hey, I like the talent I've assembled. Shaq looks pretty good there. Let me close this out and win a title. But they're so far from that. And Phil, no, Phil's not going to coach. I don't think he's going to be physically. I'm not sure he can do it, but just there's not a lot they're going to do to improve next year. The next summer 15 is when they can really make some moves, and I think Phil will concentrate on that. Certainly Mike Woodson will be fired here in the next day or two or three. And then I think it'll be Steve Kerr's job if Steve wants to do it.
Yeah. The whole Carmelo Anthony thing, though, is going to be fascinating. That he'll opt out, but that doesn't mean he won't re-sign. Does Carmelo care about winning a championship?
Listen, I think he cares about winning a championship. In the end, it's do you care more than what? Money, geography, being in New York. There's obviously some teams this summer who can do some cap maneuvering, like Chicago, even potentially Houston. Although I don't know that there's going to be a fit there for him. But let's say Chicago, where is Melo willing to take less money and less years on his deal to go to a team with, obviously Derrick Rose returning, the infrastructure of players they have there, and obviously Tom Thibodeau. That's a lot less money. And Carmelo, this is his last big contract, and so 5 years and $129 million that he could get from New York, he's going to have to give up almost unprecedented numbers to leave. I think in the end now he probably stays. I think Phil sells him on rebuilding here. The Lakers don't make sense for him. They're not any closer to a title than the Knicks are right now.
Before I let you go, the most likely first-round upset will be where?
It's hard to call any of these upsets, especially in the East where some of these 3-6. I would say I'll throw out the possibility of Atlanta, Indiana, if Indiana just can't, if they just can't.
Oh my God!
Get themselves righted here. If they get beat at home and it's 1-1 going back to Atlanta, I don't think Atlanta has enough to do it. But I do think that's a 1-8 that could go further if the Pacers are losing. If they don't get off to a good start and this thing keeps snowballing on them.
Man. Here's Atlanta, didn't want to make the playoffs.
No.
Well, oh, damn. We won our first-round matchup. Now we got to play into the second round here.
Yeah, I think Indiana's too talented, but I just, when you look at some of these 4-5 isn't an upset. I mean, listen, Toronto's a 3-6 with Brooklyn. I guess Brooklyn winning's an upset, but would any of us be surprised if they won? I don't even want to call that an upset because I don't think it would be.
Adrian, good to visit with you. Thanks for joining us.
Dan, anytime. We'll talk to you soon.
Adrian Wojnarowski, Yahoo Sports columnist. The Miracle of St. Anthony's season with Coach Bob Hurley, basketball's most improbable dynasty, a New York Times bestseller. So good to visit with him.